by what the federal and state laws say, what we can and can't do. It's just that simple. It's not a complex issue. I think you all understand that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from council members? All right, Mr. Cardinale. And is there anyone else from the public to speak? Because if not, he will be our last speaker. Thank you.
So we saved the best for last, right?
We'll see.
These were a gift. Hi, everybody. This is Matthew Cardinale, news editor of Atlanta Progressive News. Just a quick note on the AHA thing, because I think it's fascinating. I just wonder if there are any other appointments that where there's language, state law, talking about it, that the mayor shall appoint, where it doesn't talk about confirmation, and that the council has, if there's another similar situation where the council has already interpreted similar language to say that all it says is appointment, it doesn't say anything about confirmation, and therefore
I'm sure there are some other ones. I don't know. Do you all know examples?
A majority of the other boards are not created the same way the AHA is through the Georgia Code. For instance, the Development Authority's code section allows for the creation of Atlanta Development Authority, and it gives us a lot more flexibility on how to create and how to appoint people to that board. This code section, because of the power and the authorities that were granted to it when it was created, it was set forth, the approval process was much more clear or distinct than the other ones. Most of the other ones, we have a lot more flexibility when we create those boards or commissions.
And all housing authorities in the state of Georgia comply with this?
All housing authority boards in the state of Georgia have to comply with this section.
Okay, thank you. I think it's fortuitous that we have the new city attorney pending approval here today, and I like what I've heard so far. I recall the discussion around the Atlanta Housing Authority oversight legislation that Ms. Moore introduced in 2008, and if you remember, we got into a big debate over what the demolition process in the federal regulations, whether it allowed for the council to have oversight or not. And several council members asked at that point, who do the city attorneys work for? I think it may have been Lamar Willis who asked this question, or Ivory Young, but who do the city attorneys, or it may have been Caesar, who do the city attorneys work for? And the answer came back for the mayor's office. And so I think that's the crux of the problem. And until the council has its own attorneys or set of attorneys, the issue is going to be, to what extent are the city attorneys going to really just work for the mayor's office, or to what extent are they going to give independent advice to this council, or are they just going to represent what the mayor office wants? Another question is whether city attorneys will simply defend an action that is already taken. When a question comes up about an action that is already taken, is it the city? Will the city attorneys be willing to give an opinion and say, you know what, maybe what we did was wrong? And I think that that's something else that the citizens are concerned about. I mean, surely there's some different motivations there. I mean, one motivation is the city to protect itself, but the other job is to offer a legal opinion. And I'm just wondering how the city attorneys have contemplated that. I'm not going to get into the substance of this, but as you know, I mean, I have filed a lawsuit against the city, and this is of interest to me. It really doesn't help anyone, the taxpayers, the citizens, when lawsuits that maybe could have been avoided go to litigation. It costs the city attorney's time, it costs the taxpayers money, and I have been in the position where, you know, I'm financing my side of the lawsuit as a plaintiff, and then I'm basically also financing the defendants as a taxpayer. So if I win, I really still lose, and if I lose, I double lose, you know. And so I think that the city attorneys should, wherever possible, try to work with citizens and citizens groups on settlements where possible. Now, there is a legal issue that has caught my eye that is coming before the council, before the full council today, regarding City Hall East. And this is related to the Open Records Act. It has come to my attention that Councilman Young asked at CDHR last Tuesday for a copy of the plans, the developer's plans for City Hall East, and he was told that there was a confidentiality agreement between the city and the developer, and that Mr. Young was told by David Bennett that he would not be allowed to see those documents because of the confidentiality agreement, that he'd have to get special permission. I just made a public records request for those documents. I don't think it's fair that we have city property up for sale and the public or the council members who are supposed to work on behalf of the public are not allowed to see the plans. And as Mr. Bond and Mr. Young put pretty well, how do we know we're getting the best value from that sale? I have made that request. First, I went to Rhonda Dauphin-Johnson's office, and she said, I don't think I have documents responsive to that, so I'm probably going to be getting a response that says that. I also gave a copy of it to Mr. Bennett, and we're going to see how he responds. I did look up the Open Records Act, and it does have, as you know, a series of exemptions. One of the exemptions is for real estate transactions, but for the acquisition, not the sale. So I believe that if that document has come into city hands, that the public has a right to look at it, and I'm interested in seeing the response. But a procedural related issue, Ms. Moore, that I hope you'll think about, because Mr. Howard and I were kind of baffled when we went to Rhonda Dauphin-Johnson's office, and she said, we've never received that document. That may have come to the mayor's office, but I, Rhonda Dauphin-Johnson's office, haven't had it in my possession. Therefore, she says she's probably going to respond and say, it's not in my possession. Is there not a single public information officer for the whole city who would respond to any requests for any documents and anything that you could do to make that clear to the public? Because
as I know it, Mr. Cardinale, if you have a specific open, and of course the law department, correct me if I'm wrong, if you have a specific open records request to a specific department, that you have to make it there because they're the creator of the document.
Okay.
All documents that are created in City Hall don't necessarily end up in the clerk's office.
Okay.
And so just because it's in the department doesn't make it also in the clerk's office. Now you can find documents that have legislation that's gone through the process. That stuff resides in the clerk's office. And there's specific stuff that you may see in the legislation, say a copy at the clerk's office, but the clerk isn't going to have a copy of everything. And as it relates to that, I don't know if somebody from the law department is prepared to respond. I'm not sure what the nature of the information you asked for, but if it is a part of the real estate transaction, it may still be under that exemption. I'm not sure. Mr. Andrews is standing there. Maybe he has an answer.
Peter Andrews, City's Law Department. The information that Mr. Cardinale has requested, from what I can gather here today, is not a public document for the purposes of it. Was not created for our use, nor is it being used by the city. It is a document that's being used by a third party for what they feel they're going to redevelop that property as. The council has set certain guidelines as to uses through the zoning code, as well as in the purchase sale agreement with ADA on what they would like to see at that property. But the theory that just because a property is being redeveloped inside the city limits means that any plans associated with it should be public record is not the case.
But in any instance, the parameters we've set around zoning and that kind of thing, whatever their plan is, and I haven't even seen it, it would have to conform to where we are right
That's
now,
right.
or we would have to make changes?
That's right. When the third-party developer comes in to pull a building permit, their site plan and their building plans will have to meet the zoning requirements that are already in place on the property, as well as any other requirements that are imposed upon them by the Atlanta Development Authority. In our transfer to the Atlanta Development Authority, we have asked that certain things be met, including affordable housing units and other easements and stuff like that. But anything else that ADA also adds to that in their sale with the third party would also have to be part of that agreement.
Okay, maybe you, Mr. Cardinale, I'll let you finish your comments. If you need more details, he can answer afterwards. Is that all the members of the public that have signed up to speak? Mr. Cardinale, were you finished with your comments?
Well, I just want to make sure that we're clear that Mr. Bennett at CDHR last Tuesday stated that the plans had been shown to select members of the mayor's office. And so the idea that these are private developers' plans that have never come into contact or interplay with the mayor's office is in contradiction to the statement made by Mr. Bennett. And so I feel that if the documents have come into city hands, they are a public record and would be subject to the Open Records Act. And I would hate to have to bring a second lawsuit. Thank you.
Okay.
I would just like to clarify for council, just because somebody sees something doesn't mean make it a public record.
Whose document is it? Who produced the document?
It is the third-party developer's document. It's not the city's. We are not the custodian of it. It is not a document that is needed or developed within the course of the business of the city of Atlanta. If the case was anybody in the city who saw something becomes a public document, that's a pretty voluminous type of request that could be submitted as anything that Mr. Wan has seen in his dealings with anybody as associated as a city council person for District 6. That would be impossible to provide. It's only when there's a document that we're the custodian of or that is created in the course of our day-to-day operations.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order? If not, we're adjourned.